the illusion begins to crack. They don't fear confrontation. They don't fear insults. They don't even fear being hated. What truly frightens a narcissist at a level so deep it rarely reaches words is something far quieter, far colder, and far more final. It begins the moment they sense the world no longer pauses for them. At first, nothing dramatic happens. No arguments, no explosive endings. Just a subtle shift in gravity. A delayed reply. A meeting that goes on without them. A room that doesn't turn when they enter. And in that silence, something inside the narcissist starts to fracture. Because narcissism is not built on confidence. It is built on terror. Terror of being ordinary, unseen, and ultimately unnecessary. Behind the charm, the intensity, the certainty, there is a fragile internal structure psychologists often call the false self. This false self is not a personality flourish. It is a psychological life support system. It exists to protect the narcissist from a core wound formed long before you ever met them, a wound of inadequacy, shame, and emotional emptiness that never fully healed. The illusion must be maintained at all costs. Imagine Daniel, a magnetic marketing executive in New York City. For years, he commanded attention effortlessly. People responded instantly. His opinions shaped decisions. His presence mattered. Or at least, that's what he believed. Then slowly, almost imperceptibly, people stopped revolving around him. Messages were answered hours later instead of minutes. Decisions were made without consulting him. Laughter in rooms no longer waited for his cue. No one rejected Daniel outright. No one challenged him. And that's precisely what terrified him. Because rejection still acknowledges importance. Indifference does not. When a narcissist becomes irrelevant, their nervous system reacts as if facing extinction. The false self begins to lose energy. Panic emerges, often disguised as irritation, sarcasm, or sudden aggression. What they feel is not loneliness. It is annihilation. As if their existence itself is being erased. In the digital age, this fear is amplified. No notifications. No engagement. No emotional feedback. Silence becomes unbearable. The narcissist does not ask, "Why don't they like me?" They ask, "Do I still exist?" And just as destabilizing is a second crack in the illusion, losing control over the narrative. Narcissists survive by shaping reality. They curate stories. They reinterpret events. They subtly rewrite the past to maintain their superiority and innocence. As long as others argue, explain, defend, or react emotionally, the narcissist remains in control of meaning. Lauren, a senior project manager in San Francisco, mastered this skill. In meetings, she reframed failures as misunderstandings, positioned herself as the unappreciated backbone of the team, and quietly shifted blame without naming it. For years, colleagues pushed back emotionally, trying to clarify facts, defend themselves, or prove their intentions. Lauren thrived in the chaos. Then something changed. One colleague stopped correcting her. Another calmly stated facts without explanation. No emotional charge. No debate. No defense. Just quiet, grounded truth. The room fell still. In that moment, Lauren lost something far more valuable than authority. She lost narrative dominance. When people stop participating in the narcissist's version of reality, the illusion collapses under its own weight. Narcissists do not panic when challenged. They panic when no one engages. When their words no longer provoke emotion. When their stories no longer require correction. Because control over the narrative is control over identity. What frightens narcissists at their core is not exposure, it is invisibility. Not being attacked, but being bypassed. Not being argued with, but being unnecessary to the story. This is where the illusion begins to crack. And once it cracks, everything that follows the rage, the manipulation, the desperation, our attempts to seal it back together before reality floods in. If this resonates so far, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Your support allows us to keep creating deep, honest content that helps people understand narcissistic dynamics, heal from them, and reclaim their sense of self. Before we move on, here's a quick question for you. Think carefully and answer honestly in the comments. Which do you believe frightens a narcissist more? A being openly criticized and attacked. B. Being calmly ignored and emotionally disengaged. Comment A or B below. When the mirror turns against them, there is a moment quiet, almost imperceptible, when the narcissist senses something has shifted. It isn't a confrontation. It isn't a fight. It's the unsettling feeling of being observed without admiration, of being noticed without being idealized. This is the moment when the mirror turns against them. Narcissists do not fear criticism the way most people do. Criticism can be dismissed, reframed, or weaponized into victimhood. What they fear is far more destabilizing. Accurate perception. To be seen clearly, calmly, and without emotional distortion threatens the architecture of the false self itself. In Chicago, Maya begins to change not outwardly, but internally. She has spent years trying to understand her partner, Evan. At first, she reacted emotionally to his contradictions, his exaggerations, his subtle cruelty. She asked questions. She explained herself. She tried to get through to him. Evan fed on this. Her reactions reassured him that he mattered, that he was significant enough to provoke strong feelings. But something inside Maya quietly recalibrates. She stops reacting. She listens without absorbing. She notices patterns instead of engaging in arguments. When Evan tells a story that grows larger with each retelling, she doesn't challenge it. When he subtly reframes events to place himself at the center, she doesn't correct him. Her responses become brief, neutral, grounded. Evan feels it immediately. Narcissists are acutely sensitive to shifts in emotional temperature. They track tone, posture, pauses, micro-expressions. When admiration fades, when emotional engagement cools, it registers as danger. Evan cannot name what's wrong, but he feels exposed. Maya isn't angry. She isn't pleading. She isn't impressed. She is aware. This is terrifying to a narcissist because awareness strips away illusion without ever raising a weapon. It bypasses defenses. There is nothing to argue with, nothing to fight. Accurate perception does not announce itself. It simply exists. To be admired is safe. To be hated is tolerable. But to be understood, without drama, without urgency, is profoundly destabilizing. Because once someone sees the patterns, the false self can no longer perform uninterrupted. And then there is the second mirror, even more unforgiving. Reality itself. In Austin, Ryan has built his identity on being exceptional, a visionary, a misunderstood genius. He speaks with certainty and dismisses doubt as weakness. Advisors who question him are negative. Data that contradicts him is short-term noise. His confidence fills rooms until the numbers arrive. Missed projections. Shrinking revenue. Clients quietly disengaging. None of this comes from a rival's attack or a public scandal. It emerges slowly, impersonally, without accusation. Reality does not argue. It does not explain. It simply reveals outcomes. This is what narcissists cannot tolerate. Facts are dangerous not because they are harsh, but because they are indifferent. They don't care about intention. They don't respond to charm. They cannot be gaslit. This phenomenon, when real-world consequences slip past the narcissist's narrative control, is deeply frightening. It exposes a truth the narcissist works relentlessly to avoid. Confidence does not equal competence. Ryan does what narcissists often do when confronted with evidence. He attacks the source. He discredits analysts. He blames market conditions. He reframes failure as sabotage. But the anxiety grows, because the mirror of reality does not blink. What frightens narcissists here is not being wrong, it is the implication that they are not superior, that the world does not need their version of themselves to function, that outcomes exist independently of their self-image. This is why narcissists often escalate when they sense quiet awareness or encounter undeniable evidence. Rage, contempt, and sudden hostility are not signs of strength. They are panic responses. The false self is losing ground. When the mirror turns against them, whether through someone who sees clearly or through reality that refuses to cooperate, the narcissist feels cornered. There is no audience to perform for, no emotional chaos to feed on, no narrative left to control. And in that stillness, something unbearable emerges. The possibility that the self they've been protecting is not who they truly are. That realization is not loud. It does not explode. It seeps in slowly, like water through a crack in the foundation. And once it begins, the illusion can never be fully restored. Emotional starvation and identity collapse. There comes a point in narcissistic dynamics when the tension shifts from confrontation to hunger. Not hunger for connection, not hunger for love, but hunger for reaction. This is the stage where emotional fuel begins to run dry, and with it, the narcissist's sense of self starts to falter. Narcissistic identity is not sustained internally. It is powered externally, through emotional exchange. Praise feeds it. Anger feeds it. Tears feed it. Fear feeds it. Even resentment feeds it. As long as emotion is flowing toward them, the false self remains energized, animated, and intact. But emotional neutrality changes everything. In Seattle, Alex does not announce his withdrawal. He doesn't issue ultimatums or deliver speeches. He simply stops responding the way he used to. Conversations lose intensity. Arguments no longer escalate. When provoked, he pauses. When accused, he doesn't defend. When blamed, he neither accepts nor resists. His voice stays even, his body language calm. At first, this confuses the narcissist in his life. Then it unsettles them, and eventually, it terrifies them. Because emotional neutrality is not coldness, it is not cruelty, it is regulation, and regulation removes leverage. Narcissists depend on dysregulation in others. They rely on emotional spikes to feel significant. When Alex stops providing that intensity, the narcissist feels something unfamiliar and unbearable. Boredom. And boredom, to a narcissist, signals extinction. Without emotional reactions to push against, the narcissist begins to feel invisible. Their words no longer land. Their provocations no longer ignite. Their presence no longer dominates the emotional space. This absence of reaction creates a vacuum where identity once lived. This is emotional starvation, and starvation produces desperation. The narcissist may escalate, becoming louder, crueler, or suddenly affectionate. They may accuse Alex of being cold, manipulative, or emotionally abusive. They may attempt to provoke guilt or fear. None of it is about resolution. All of it is about restoring supply. But neutrality holds. And as it does, something deeper collapses. Narcissists often believe they are irreplaceable, that they occupy a central, permanent role in the lives of others. When that belief erodes, panic sets in, not because of loss, but because of what the loss represents. Elena's story unfolds after a relationship ends, not with chaos, but with quiet expansion. She doesn't stalk social media. She doesn't seek explanations. She doesn't rehearse old conversations. Instead, she leaves the familiar environment and travels alone to Sedona, Arizona. There, her life begins to widen. She hikes, she writes, She reconnects with parts of herself that were muted for years. She builds friendships not based on intensity, but mutual presence. Her days are not dramatic, but they are full. To a narcissist, this is devastating. Elena is not suffering publicly. She is not longing. She is not frozen in place, waiting for closure. She is becoming someone new, someone whose life no longer requires reference to the past. What frightens the narcissist here is not being replaced by another person, but by a life. A full life leaves no room for orbiting, no need for monitoring, no reason to look back. When someone grows beyond the narcissistic dynamic, the narcissist is reduced to what they always feared becoming. A footnote. This is why independence feels like betrayal to them. Not because it is, but because it exposes their dependency. Narcissists do not attach to people, they attach to roles. When the role disappears, so does their sense of relevance. Emotional starvation and identity collapse often trigger one final attempt at control: hoovering, love bombing, sudden vulnerability, apologies that sound sincere but lack accountability. These are not signs of transformation. They are survival strategies. Because the narcissist senses what is happening. The emotional well has dried up. The supply has stopped flowing. The self they constructed to survive is losing coherence. And in that unraveling, they are confronted with a truth they have spent a lifetime avoiding. Without external emotion to feed on, they do not know who they are. This is not cruelty. It is consequence. When emotional engagement ends and life moves forward, the narcissist is left alone with the very emptiness they built the false self to escape. And for them, there is no fear greater than that silence. The ultimate threat: individuation. There is one threat a narcissist can never neutralize, manipulate, or recover from. It is not confrontation. It is not exposure. It is not abandonment. It is individuation, the quiet, irreversible process by which another human being becomes fully themselves. Individuation does not announce its arrival. It does not argue. It does not seek permission. It happens slowly, internally, and by the time the narcissist senses it, the dynamic they depended on is already over. Narcissistic relationships are built on emotional hierarchy. One person remains centered, reactive, defining the rules of engagement. The other is pulled into orbit, responding, adjusting, anticipating, explaining. Individuation shatters this structure because it removes the narcissist from the psychological center without replacing them with someone else. In a family system in Boston, this shift often looks deceptively calm. No screaming matches, no dramatic confrontations, just boundaries that are firm, brief, and consistently enforced. The individuated person no longer over-explains. They no longer justify. They no longer argue about the past. Their responses are grounded in the present and guided by self-respect rather than fear. To the narcissist, this is deeply unsettling. Narcissistic dynamics operate at a childlike emotional level. Impulsive, reactive, transactional. There is a constant need to win, to punish, to be right, to be seen as superior. Individuation represents adulthood. Emotional regulation, complexity, nuance. It signals that the person is no longer willing to play a zero-sum game. What makes this the ultimate threat is that it offers no opening for counterattack. The individuated person does not seek revenge. They do not attempt to humiliate. They do not demand accountability. They simply live according to their values. And this is intolerable to a narcissist because it removes all leverage. Narcissists unconsciously want others to regress. They want emotional chaos, dependency, and intensity. When someone matures, when they can hold discomfort without reacting, disagreement without collapsing, distance without hatred, the narcissist loses their primary tools. This is why attempts to provoke often intensify at this stage. The narcissist may accuse the individuated person of being cold, arrogant, or heartless. They may frame boundaries as cruelty. They may suddenly express vulnerability or claim profound insight. These are not signs of growth. They are bids to restore the old dynamic. But individuation does not negotiate. The individuated person understands something the narcissist cannot tolerate: that two truths can coexist, that someone can be flawed without being evil, that the past can be acknowledged without being relived. That closure is an internal process, not a conversation. This level of emotional maturity destabilizes the narcissist because it mirrors what they lack and cannot easily acquire. Narcissists are trapped in a cycle of external validation. Individuation breaks that cycle by sourcing meaning internally. Perhaps the most painful realization for the narcissist is that individuation renders them ordinary. Not demonized, not exalted, just human. And ordinary does not feed the false self. When someone individuates, they no longer define themselves through opposition or attachment. The narcissist is no longer the villain or the hero of their story. They become a chapter, finite, instructive, complete. This is why growth without bitterness is the deepest narcissistic injury. Hatred keeps the narcissist central. Revenge keeps the narcissist relevant. Healing removes them from the narrative altogether. The individuated person does not need the narcissist to change. They do not need apologies. They do not need validation. Their life moves forward with or without acknowledgement. And this is the moment the narcissist fears most, not because they are losing someone, but because they are losing access. Access to emotional energy. Access to identity. Access to influence. Individuation closes the door, not with anger, but with clarity. And once that door closes, it does not reopen, not because of punishment, but because it is no longer needed. This is the ultimate truth. Narcissists cannot escape. You existed before them, and you will exist after them. Not diminished, not hardened, but more fully yourself. And that more than anything else is what frightens them to their core. As this story comes to a close, a clear pattern emerges, not just about narcissism, but about human resilience. Across different cities, roles, and relationships, the same arc unfolded again and again. The narcissistic characters were not defeated by confrontation or exposure. They were undone by something far quieter: the gradual loss of emotional access to the people they once centered their identity around. Daniel lost relevance. Lauren lost control of the narrative. Evan sensed he was being seen clearly. Ryan could not escape reality's verdict. The narcissists did not collapse because someone attacked them, but because the people around them changed. Alex learned emotional regulation. Elena built a life that no longer revolved around the past. Others set boundaries with calm consistency. Each step removed emotional fuel from the narcissistic dynamic until the false self could no longer sustain itself. The deepest lesson from this story is not about how to defeat a narcissist. It is about how growth changes power dynamics automatically. When you stop reacting, stop explaining, stop centering another person's emotional needs above your own, the system reorganizes itself. Healing does not require permission. Individuation does not need applause. And emotional maturity does not announce itself. It simply moves forward. Applied to real life, this means learning to regulate your nervous system, cultivating a full life beyond one relationship, and choosing clarity over chaos. It means allowing others to feel their discomfort without rushing to fix it. Most importantly, it means reclaiming authorship of your own story. Disclaimer: this video is for educational and informational purposes only. It is not a substitute for professional diagnosis, psychological evaluation, or therapy from a licensed mental health professional. Before we end, here's a quick question for you. Which do you think leads to true freedom from narcissistic dynamics? A. Understanding the narcissist better. A. Understanding yourself better. Comment A or B below. What are your thoughts or personal experiences with this topic? Share your perspective in the comments so others can learn from it too. And if this content resonated with you, please subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us keep creating meaningful, healing-focused videos like this.